LA Kings fans react to this week's shows and more on this fan feedback edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show now going into its 20th year, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. It is time for another Kings fan feedback show, your chance to complain, praise, question, celebrate, and pontificate over our Los Angeles Kings. However, we do have a couple of news items to pass along. First, the LA Kings have reportedly agreed with restricted free agent forward Alex Laferriere on a 3-year deal worth $12.3 million. He'll make $4.1 million per season. And Quentin Byfield and Drew Doughty have been invited to Hockey Canada's orientation camp in preparation for the 2026 Winter Olympics. We're going to have full details and analysis of both of these stories coming up on Monday's edition of Locked On LA Kings. But I definitely wanted to pass along that news to you if you did not hear about it. So let's get into this week's fan feedback show. I will read the emails in the order in which they were received, and I did add a few of the longer emails so we could make sure we get everybody in. Hopefully that will be the case. So let's begin with a quick note from Brian in Hermosa. He says, on the show with the 4 other Locked On hosts, I really enjoyed this subject podcast from that standpoint. And like you, I'm now encouraged by the feedback on the newly added players from the other team's podcasters. Many thanks. That was Brian in Hermosa. Yeah, that was a fun episode to do. If you missed it, go check it out. But we had the hosts of Locked On Sharks to talk about Cody Ceci. We had the host of Locked On Ducks to talk about Brian Dumoulin and add his 2 cents in on Corey Perry. We had the host of Locked On Canadiens to talk about Joel Armia. And we had the host of Locked On Senators to talk about Peter Forsberg. Philip Forsberg. No, not Philip Forsberg. Anton Forsberg. Know your Forsbergs. Anton Forsberg, the backup goalie for the Kings. So they were all able to talk about those players. And I would say, other than Cody Ceci, who JD Young, the host of Locked On Sharks, thought would be fine with the Kings. Kyle Carr from Locked On Ducks really sounded like he was sad that Brian Dumoulin wasn't a part of the Ducks anymore. Ian Bovair, the host of Locked On Canadiens, really was sad that Joel Armia wasn't a part of the Canadiens anymore. And at least Ross Levitan, the host of Locked On Senators, certainly was, wishing Anton Forsberg well with the Kings. It sounded like he really liked him, although not sure. It's a backup goalie. You've got bigger fish to fry on your team. But good things were said about most of those guys. There wasn't anybody that said, "Oh, thank God that guy's not on my team anymore." Like I said, the closest one maybe was Cody Ceci, but I think JD Young was saying, yeah, he wasn't great with the Sharks, but there's a lot of bad things with the Sharks, and Cody Ceci wasn't the worst of them. So, I thought it was insightful. I thought it was encouraging, and really enjoyed doing a show like that. And we're going to probably try and do some more things like that in the future. And it seemed like it was pretty well received. Madeline checks in from parts unknown and says, I've been around hockey for many years as a casual game attendee and even a brief stint running the soundboard for a hockey radio show about a decade ago. Sheesh, can I be that old? I am now feeling the pull to get more serious as a fan, and I'm trying to really learn the rules of the game, pay attention to teams and players, and I intend to watch games next season. I love minor league hockey, and I currently live in a state that recently sold their NHL team, but my city has a great AHL program, and I enjoy going to their games. However, I really want to follow the NHL. I grew up in LA and went to Kings games as a kid, yes, even in the Gretzky era. So when it came time to pick a player, it was easy and an obvious choice. In my hunt for knowledge, I found your podcast and have really enjoyed listening daily, as well as going back to prior episodes to learn as much as possible. Do you have any recommendations for a new hockey fan wanting to get more familiar with the game? What are your favorite hockey movies, TV shows, books? Any tips on what a new fan should be looking out for this season as it kicks off? Thanks for your awesome podcast. I really enjoyed listening in. And that was Madeline, who I'm guessing is in Tucson, Arizona, because she said her NHL team recently was sold. That's got to be the Arizona Coyotes, right? And she said that her town has an AHL team. So I know the Tucson Roadrunners are an AHL team. So I got to think she's in Tucson. Maybe I have figured that out. Maybe I've used my detective senses and figured that out. Anyway, I did mention in our Ask Eddie show this week that I am a fan of history. There was a documentary series that the CBC did years ago. It was called Hockey: A People's History. And all 10 episodes are on YouTube. So anybody that wants to check this out can. It's 10 episodes. I highly recommend it. If you want to know about the history of hockey, it is fantastic. Kind of reminiscent of like Ken Burns baseball, that kind of a thing. I loved it, and I've been meaning to go back and watch it again, to be honest with you. So I would recommend that for the history of the game, learning about the history of the game. As far as movies go, I mean, I love Slapshot and Goon. That's certainly entertaining, but I would probably recommend to someone looking for probably an authentic historic hockey movie, Miracle, about the 1980 U.S. Olympic team. As far as books go, I'll give a shout out to my friend, author Brian Kennedy, who's written several hockey books. I'd recommend Facing Gretzky, where it is written from the perspective of interviewing a lot of players that played against Wayne Gretzky as well. As far as learning the rules of the game, I will tell you this. If you have any questions about rules, you can ask me. I'd be happy to explain them, off the show, if you will. But I would imagine YouTube, if you typed in basic hockey rules, I would be willing to bet people have made videos explaining the basic hockey rules that you might want to know if you need to learn about that. Spike in Fremont checks in. He says, I caught your Ask Eddie show. Really appreciated the insight and your personableness, which I think is a word. That's what makes you appealing, your sincere treatment of your audience. Thank you, Spike. He says, I'm sorry I missed the last two Saturday chats. The previous Saturday I was playing in the annual Snoopy Senior World Hockey Tournament in Santa Rosa. I've captained a team since 2016 in the 50-plus division, or in the 50s division. I'm also sharing some action photos of me from this past season. Hope you like the very familiar ensemble. I play hockey with Roxy Bernstein, who does games for ESPN. He did last year's Game 1, the playoffs in Los Angeles. If you're looking for an interview subject during the season, I'm pretty sure he'd come on if I asked him. Keep up the good work and hope to join the chat on Saturday. That is Spike in Fremont. He's referring to the weekly chat we do for our LA Kings Extra members. If you're interested in that, send me an email at lakingsextra@gmail.com. I'm certainly glad you liked the Ask Eddie show. I certainly enjoyed doing it. I did check out his action photos, and the uniforms are basically Kings uniforms, except for instead of LA, it's got some different initials on the front, but the old home plate logo is the uniforms that he had. So yes, I did like those. I'm well aware of Roxy Bernstein, very solid broadcaster, can do a lot of different things, does baseball really well, does hockey well. So yeah, I've never met him, but would love to talk to him sometime. Nick, aka Johnny Utah in West Hollywood, says, just catching up on getting the To Know You podcast. Great episode. Seven is one of my favorite movies. Also, I just recently caught the 30th anniversary screening following a Q&A from the screenwriter, Andrew Kevin Walker. If fans don't know him, they should look him up. He wrote the screenplay to Seven while working at Tower Records in the early 90s. There's a throwback. Not sure why fans are upset with the Corey Perry signing. I am stoked to have Perry. He'll bring back the pest element we haven't had since Brendan Lemieux. It may take a few games, but he'll definitely endear himself to the fan base. Don't be shocked if he does something outrageous when the Kings play the Oilers. He has previously fought both Nurse and Frederick. The fans' concern instead should be focused on the terrible contracts Holland handed out to CeCe and Dumoulin. One player is widely regarded as the worst D-man in the show, and the other is about to turn 34. Does CeCe have Holland's laptop? No pun intended. Also, in return, the return on spends was terrible. I'm nervous about Holland's future moves and what he'll give up moving forward. Another concern is the Kings' toughness. They had one of the toughest players in the league in Jeannot, and he walked. I would have paid a 28-year-old Jeannot $3+ million instead of $4.5 million for a 31-year-old CC and $4 million for a 33-year-old Dumoulin. On recent interviews, Holland has mentioned putting Turcotte on the fourth line or battling it out with Hellenius. Turcotte is not a fourth line center. He's brittle as Mr. Glass. You can't take Jeannot, Hellenius, and Malott out of the lineup. The Kings will be soft as Charmin. They can't leave the fighting and toughness on a 40-year-old Perry and Edmondson, who hasn't had a fighting major in 2 seasons. When they previously had Jeannot, England, McEwen, and Lemieux playing almost every game for the past 4 or 5 seasons. It also brings me to another issue. The Kings have no jam in their top 9. They need a Tom Wilson or Josh Anderson type player. I know those players are rare, but the top 9 has no bite besides Kempe. Hoping Cohen Zemer or Lawrence emerge as that type of player and can crack the top 9 one of these seasons. Greentree has some bite, but also is more of a scorer. Also, there is a monster Kings prospect in the system, but he's a defenseman, Jack Sparks, who's 6'8", hoping he turns pro soon. Jared Woolley is a stud prospect also that can play nasty. Look up his fight card last year in London. He dominated most of his fights. Keep up the great work, Nick in West Hollywood. I like Tanner Jeannot too, but he wanted a bigger role. And frankly, even though I liked the role he played with the Kings, I wouldn't want him anywhere on our team other than the fourth line. The guys like Englund and McEwen and Lemieux, honestly, those guys aren't NHL players, and you can't just have those kind of guys on your roster anymore unless they can actually do something other than fight. Toughness is important. I don't know that fighting is really that important anymore in today's game. If they need somebody to do that, Hellenius could fill that role if necessary. I don't have a big issue with Dumoulin's contract if he's going to be on the second pairing, which I think he is. If he's a third pairing guy, then yeah, $4 million a year is too much. CC, obviously, we talked about the contract. It's too much for a third pairing guy. I think from a purely hockey standpoint, though, he is okay if he's on your third pairing. Corey Perry doing something against the Oilers, I think would go a long way in helping to win over some of the fan base. As far as Turcotte, played 68 games last year. Hopefully he can do something like that again and put that fragile label behind him, but he has to do that. As for the movie Seven, I don't know if anyone else is into this, but sometimes I find myself watching reaction videos on YouTube, and there are some channels out there, they put like a compilation together of like iconic movie scenes and people reacting to them. The one for Seven is about as good as it gets. People reacting to the ending of that movie is a lot of fun. All right, just getting started. We've got more fan feedback to come here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop the closer you get to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Gametime's zone deals pick the best seat in your section for you. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? Well, the app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. With Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Worried about what happens if plans change? The Gametime guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Continuing with the emails, Alan in Sonoma checks in. He says, every day are here. Thank you, Alan. Got to say, out of all the podcasts for my sports teams, you and Locked On Rams are the best on any platform, in my humble opinion. I just wish the Rams would follow suit and go back to their old unis like the Kings. I have to say, the episode you just put out with all the Locked On hosts pertaining to our new free agents was awesome. And I can see how if Clark really steps up, then we will have way more depth on the blue line. A guy I've been waiting to be a King is Jason Robertson, but I see the Panthers want him in a trade to fill for Matthew Tkachuk if his surgery, which would possibly take him out to the playoffs, and then Florida could go Vegas on us and insert Tkachuk into the roster. One last question. Does your wife like the throwback Charger Navy uniforms? I think they're absolutely sick. Why are all the old uniforms the best? Have a good one. Go Kings go. Alan in Sonora. Yeah, those old Rams uniforms I thought were among the best, if not the best, in the NFL. Not a big fan of the newer ones. I know things evolved, but those were great uniforms. My wife does love the Chargers Navy uniforms, and I actually really like the Chargers uniforms in general. The powder blue, I think, is awesome. The Hall of Fame game they played the other day, they had the powder blue pants on, which I was told they'd never worn before. I thought they looked awesome. I did see something about Matthew Tkachuk having surgery, but the story that I saw did not say he was going to be out until Christmas, or I should say out for the whole season. They said he was going to be out until like Christmas. So I don't, the NHL, they're going to eliminate, the long-term injured reserve advantage after this season, and they've also really cracked down on it a lot. So I don't see that happening anymore, especially if Matthew Tkachuk is only going to miss like half the season. The Florida Panthers can't sign Jason Robertson. They can't afford him. So I don't see that happening. Brian in Los Alamitos, aka Sock It To Me Cake, checking in. He says, when Rob Blake stepped away from the GM position, I thought we had heard the last of Mark Bergevin, but apparently he's still with the team, working as a senior advisor to Ken Holland. In your discussion with the Locked On Canadians host, he pointed out that there are several former Bergevin players now playing for the Kings. This makes me wonder, how much influence does this guy really have? And do most teams employ advisors? I'm not saying Bergevin has done a bad job, but these former Canadians who are now playing for the Kings can't just be a coincidence. Should we expect Bergevin to take over as GM in the near future? Really enjoyed this week's shows, especially Ask Eddie. Keep up the good work. And that was Brian in Los Alamitos. Thank you, Brian. Yes, Mark Bergevin is still in his exact same role. As a matter of fact, no one in the front office other than Rob Blake has left their position or changed their position. Everyone is still in the same place except for the GM. Rob Blake out and Ken Holland is in. Mark Bergevin was a Luke Robitaille hire, not a Rob Blake hire. So that's not that big of a surprise. Although he was interviewed for some GM vacancies. I'm pretty sure the Islanders interviewed him, but decided to go elsewhere. How much influence does he have? Well, it depends on who you ask, I guess. But clearly, I think they listen to him. He is a former GM in the league. How many teams have advisors? I don't know the answer to that, but it's not completely. So there are teams that do this. It's not something that the Kings are only doing. There are teams that do it. Other teams don't. I think Bergevin probably played a pretty decent role in getting Joel Armia or recommending the Kings get Joel Armia. He's a player that he knows very well. Philip Deneau was on the Kings before Bergevin got here, I'm pretty sure. And Joel Edmondson and Corey Perry have played everywhere. They're well-traveled, so not really known as being Canadiens, but they were on the team together that did make that Stanley Cup run. That is a fact. So I don't know. I think as long as Luke is the team president, you can't discount the possibility that Mark Bergevin could be the Kings GM at some point. I don't think it's necessarily likely. I thought if it was going to happen, it might happen this time around, but as long as he's still there, it's possible. And as long as Luke Robitaille is still in charge, it's possible. Ben in Fullerton says, a while ago, I thought that when McDavid's contract was up, Connor McDavid, the Oilers would give him a blank check and tell him to put any number on it. I have been questioning this recently. McDavid hasn't won a cup. His critics knock him down for it. He's 28. And Gretzky at 28 had 3 cups. As much as I hate it, I can't see McDavid or anything but an Oilers jersey. Then again, I have a picture of Gretzky in a Kings jersey, and nobody thought that was going to happen. Do you think next year McDavid will walk to another team? If so, do you think he pulls a Gretzky and comes to the Kings, and we finally get over the hump with the greatest player in the league currently? Love what you do. Go Kings, go. Ben in Fullerton. Well, Ben, you're right. No one ever thought Gretzky would be traded to the Kings, but I don't know why Connor McDavid honestly would want to come to LA. And he's going to have to want to come here because he's got a full no movement clause. So he's not going to get traded here unless he wants to come here. And why would he come to a team that hasn't had any playoff success to speak of? Because that's what he wants, right? Ultimately, Connor McDavid doesn't want to be a Dan Marino or a Mike Trout. He doesn't want to be known as the greatest player or one of the greatest players of his era, never to win a championship. So I don't see him coming to LA, frankly. And he's also not the type of guy you look at LeBron James, right? He wanted to come to LA for all the other stuff that came with being in LA and starting like a production company and being in movies and doing TV and all that kind of stuff. McDavid isn't that guy. So I just don't see him wanting to come here, frankly. He might go elsewhere, but I think ultimately he'll stay with the Oilers for now. I could see him signing a shorter term deal, maybe like a 4-year deal, and seeing where the Oilers are after 4 years. And if they're not any closer to winning a cup, then I could see him going somewhere else, because I think he desperately wants to win a cup to kind of cement his legacy as being not only a great player, but having a championship as well. So we'll see. I just don't see him coming to LA, though. Bill in Winnetka says, regarding the Kings-Sharks Game 7 in 2014, which we did a flashback show on this week, Kopitar's goal was gorgeous, but poor Martin Jones was hung out to dry. The third goal, Toffoli's goal, it's hard to relate today, but when it was live, that goal was electric. That was a stake in the heart. Also, Mike Richards' hit on Alex Burrows late in the Vancouver Series Game 1 in 2012 was more important to the team than Dustin Brown's hit on Henrik Sedin in Game 3. It's hard to overstate Dustin Brown's effect on the series. Empty net goal in Game 1, 2 shorthanded goals in Game 2. In the third game in LA, the ice was a mosh pit. The Lakers played earlier in the day, and the game went into overtime. Dustin Brown clobbers Henrik Sedin clean, later scores the only goal of the game in the third period. But it's the Mike Richards hit that enforced we're trying to win this game, and not the Terry Murray philosophy of using passive defense to protect the lead. Burrows never saw it coming, expecting a Terry Murray defensive setup. And that was Bill in Winnetka. Actually, I do have to correct you on one thing, Bill. Martin Jones was not in net for the Sharks. He was actually on the Kings in 2014. He was the backup to Jonathan Quick. Antti Niemi was the goaltender for the Sharks when Andrei Kopitar scored that beautiful backhand goal. Jones didn't join the Sharks until 2015. The thing I remember about the Toffoli goal and the Kopitar goal was the great passes that set up those goals. Justin Williams from the boards finding Kopitar in the slot, and then Tanner Pearson with, I think it was like a backhand shot a backhand pass from the corner to Toffoli. The passes really set up those nice finishes. As far as the hit, I would have to disagree on the Richards hit being a bigger factor in the playoffs than the Brown hit for a couple of reasons. The Richards hit was late in a game. The Kings were winning 3-2. It was like with about a minute left, where Brown's hit was in the second period of a scoreless game. And I'll say the Richards hit was sending a message that the Kings were staying aggressive, holding a lead, which is certainly a lesson our Kings today could have used. But the Brown hit was credited with turning the momentum of that game. A captain-on-captain hit. Henrik Sedin wasn't really effective after that, as I recall. And look, after the Kings won the cup, they talked about the key moments. Everybody mentioned the Brown hit. I don't know that anybody mentioned the Richards hit. So I'll take their word for it as well on that. But it does speak to the importance of physical hockey in the playoffs and how important it is. And both those hits were certainly nice hits. All right, we've got our final group of emails coming up here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. All right, continuing with the emails. Dan in Salt Lake City says, first-time emailer, everyday listener. Thank you, Dan. He says, thanks so much for what you do. Well, thank you for being a part of it. I believe that Gavrikov left the Kings because of Hiller. I don't think he wanted to play for this coach. Hopefully that's not something that spreads through the locker room this season. I agree Hiller is going to be on a short leash this season. Unlike everybody else, it seems, I believe the Kings are a better team this season compared to last year, as long as everyone stays healthy. The free agent class was not thick with talent. I believe Holland did the best he could with what he had to choose from and used experience to do it. I believe these guys make us better, especially the fourth line and the third pair. Then there's Corey Perry. Whether you like him or you hate him, I would rather have him playing for us than against us. I still have family in Southern California, so we make it to Kings games every year at Crypto. Love to meet up and say hi. My wife and I will be at both games in Salt Lake City this year. I'll leave it at that. Thanks again, Eddie. That was Dan in Salt Lake City. Dan would love to meet up with you when you come to town for a Kings game. Just send me an email and we'll make that happen. Look, we're not going to know what the reasons are for why Vladislav Gavrikov left unless he decides to address it. And I don't think he will. The New York media certainly doesn't care about why he left LA. And maybe he gets asked about it in his first game back in LA. But at that point, I'm sure it's behind him. And I don't see him, being honest about it, to be honest with you. He's moved on for whatever reason. I would be surprised if we ever hear what the reasons were or what the big reason was for why he decided to go. I do agree with you about Ken Holland. I think he wanted to be aggressive. I think he wanted to try and get Mitch Marner, but when that didn't happen, he had to switch to plan B. And I see what he's trying to do as far as if it is the right moves for the Kings. We will not know the answer to that until after the playoffs. Ed in Brea checks in. He says, well, first of all, Ed was his usual positive self last week when he predicted the Kings would miss the playoffs. And I questioned him saying, who's going to beat out the Kings for one of the top 3 spots? If we think Vegas and Edmonton are definitely going to be there, who's going to be the third team instead of the Kings? And I told him, don't even say the Ducks. Well, here's Ed's response. Yes, the Ducks are third in the division, finishing second, and are now favorites to win the Stanley Cup since they have the next Dominik Hasek and Lukas Dostal, who will win the Vezina and the Conn Smythe. Happy birthday, he says, to your wife. Very classy and nice woman. You have a good wife, Ed. Well, thank you, Ed. By the way, Ed and Brea and my wife, Karen, know each other because they are both Chargers fans, and they have met before at Charger games and probably tailgates and whatnot. Ed then went into a very lengthy diatribe about the LA Chargers and how they're going to win the Super Bowl this year and how Justin Herbert is an all-time great. I'm not going to get into all that here on this show. He then said, yes, hockey is expensive. However, it's worth playing. Best sport to play. I encourage people to play inline since it's cheaper than ice. Also, Ed, if you and me ever met on the rink on opposite sides, I can also guarantee you will not score on me. There are rumors the Kings' third jersey will be an original crown on a gray jersey like the Kings' 50th anniversary sweaters. Kings fans like me are hoping to see the royal blue or purple again since it's missing the color in today's game. However, team president Luc Robitaille does not like the colors. Bring back the original form blue and gold. Keep up the good work, Eddie. Go Kings, go. And he says, finally, I see the Chargers and Steelers are playing again this season. Got to do another bet when it comes. Ed in Brea. Well, Ed, I am fine betting on the Chargers-Steelers game again. And, of course, you lost that bet last year, as you well know. And you didn't do a great job paying off your bet, by the way, which was wearing a Steelers hat to a Kings game. You kind of did it, but it was like pulling teeth to try and get a picture of you wearing it. So, as far as Justin Herbert, by the way, I really like him. I do. I wish he was the quarterback of my Steelers, but can we hold off on him being an all-time great until he wins a playoff game? I mean, he's got the same number of playoff wins as Herbie the dog. Well, he's over here coughing. If you heard that, that would be 0, by the way. I tell you what, I will place a bet with you. I will bet you anything you want that Lukas Dostal does not win the Vezina or the Conn Smythe Trophy. You can call that one. Anything you want to bet on that, I will bet. So, and also, if you want to get out there on the rink, I'll find my old rollerblades. I know you play inline, not on ice like real men do. But if you want to go somewhere and to put your gear on, I'll put my rollerblades on and we'll see who's better. I'm a defensive defenseman. I don't even score, but I bet I can still probably score on you, Ed. Ed plays goalie, by the way, if you didn't know. And we could get somebody out there to record it and we could show the results. I'd be more than happy to do that. One thing we can't agree on, Ed, is the old purple and gold uniforms. I'd love to see some color in our uniforms, but unfortunately, that's not the case right now. We did have a quick Ask Eddie question that didn't make it in time for the Ask Eddie show, so I thought I'd throw it in here real quick. Vin and Sam in San Diego, who I met at a Kings game, had a question for Ask Eddie. It says, we're wondering, why are you such a big Disneyland fan, and what Disney character do you most identify with or would like to be? Go Kings, go. Sam and Vin in San Diego. Well, a few years ago, my wife asked me about getting annual passes to go to Disneyland. It kind of worked out with our schedules that we could go anytime we wanted. And she sold it in a very smart way because I'm actually not a big Disney person per se. but they just were starting to open Galaxy's Edge, which is a Star Wars themed area. And then they were building Avengers Campus, and I like Star Wars and I like the Marvel movies. So that was the selling point for me. And I was like, okay, I'll buy in. As far as like the traditional Disney stuff, I'm not actually that big of a fan. I'd even go so far as to say I don't really like Mickey Mouse or Goofy, or some of those. They're kind of annoying to me. Not all the characters, but some of those I'm not. And the classic Disney movies, my wife tried to get me to watch some of them. We watched a few of them, and I'm like, man, these are terrible. I know they're probably for kids, but still, Peter Pan was awful. Anyway, if I was going to identify with a Disney character, I'm going to go Pooh Bear, because he's very easygoing like me, and he's also chubby like me, and I like honey just fine. So I probably my who's my favorite Disney character? I probably go Wreck-It Ralph. I really loved Wreck-It Ralph. That was one of my favorite animated Disney movies. All right. Thank you to everyone who took the time to email this week. This show is literally not possible without your participation. If you want to get an email in for the feedback show for next week, don't forget the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can always leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section as well. Stay interactive with the show by following us on X, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. And if you're interested in some extra Kings content, joining our weekly chat every Saturday, you can send me an email at lakingsextra@gmail.com, and I will give you the details on that and more. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.